Got you, got you. Hey, it looks like we're live, brother. It looks
Peace.
like we're live. So, code keepers, if you like hip hop the way that we love hip hop, but you're disturbed by some of the lyrics, if you're disturbed by some of the things that happen in some of the wordplay, if you're starting to grapple and struggle with, is this misogynistic? This is the right show for you. This is the right show because we're going to look at some of the lyrics, particularly during that golden age that we call, the golden age, 90s, and look at some of the lyrics. And we're not just going to look and complain. We're also going to come up with some solutions towards the end. So in this episode of Professor Kimya's class, when the good professor arrives, we're going to do just that. And as you can see, we got the good brother Dan Trez Omi on the screen. What's up, bro?
Peace. Shout out to my professor over at St. Clair Community College. I just took his history of hip hop class.
Right.
Highly recommended. It was a 9-week course, and in the beginning of the class, we would just talk about what just came out, what came out before, we're listening to. And I know he asked me. He said, "Yo, Danny, who's in your top 10?" Right? And he noticed I didn't have Biggie. Right? So he goes, "Hey, wait a second, okay?" And I'm like, "Why not?" And they was like, "Why not?" And I was like, "Because he was about money, clothes, and hoes. He wasn't really about nothing, so he's not in my top 10. I'm not saying he was I'm not saying he was a whack lyricist. It's just that I don't think he should be in anybody's top 10. And he was shocked, and he's like, "You from New York?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he was really, really shocked that I felt that way. And I was like, actually, Ready to Die is a very disturbing album. Like, when you listen to it from beginning to end, it's like real disturbing. So, like, even Diddy said it. And, it's ironic that him and Diddy got along because Diddy was, we all know how Diddy got down. So the lyrics that Biggie was talking about fit in, differently. It all hits different, But yeah, so he's not in my top 10. He's not even in my top 25. So people are like, "Whoa," and I'm like, "Yeah," but that's one of the reasons why,
Well, in this episode of Professor Kimya's class, the good professor has joined us. Class. We're all in our spaces with bright, shiny faces, and this is the way we spark the revolution. Good to see you, Doc. How you doing?
Doing well. How are you both doing?
I'm doing good. I haven't showered yet. I had a big workout today. Got home late, so yeah.
Same here. Just finished my exercise.
Yeah. So yeah.
Good stuff. Well, tonight, the good professor and our guest lecturer Dan Trez Omi are going to deal with hip hop and misogyny. Now, I'm the DJ. And so I'm really in love with the music. So to be honest with you, I didn't pay as much attention to some of the lyrics. So they're going to really outpace me tonight, which is good. Good professor. When we think of the great Notorious B.I.G., the great lyricist, Notorious B.I.G., the Brooklyn born, well, not Brooklyn born, but the Brooklyn boy, Notorious B.I.G., and the term misogyny comes up, how do you connect those two? How is there a connection between Big and misogyny? And I know it kind of begs the question because the picture's right there on the screen, and I know we're going to go through the lyrics, but what comes to mind?
Number one, I agree with the brother here. Biggie is not on my top 30 list of MCs. And so I have a Biggie Smalls shirt that I bought 10 years ago in the kids section of a thrift store. And I love the top. I love the shirt because I love hip hop. But don't get it confused. I'm not a Biggie's fan. I like a few songs. I don't consider Biggie a lyricist. And let me tell you something, just like when I critique Jay-Z, because Jay-Z's not a good MC for me. When I critique, people want to come in like, "Rawr, Look here.
Blasphemy.
I know. Y'all are like cults. Like, I'm Rakim, but even I don't attack people on behalf of Rakim. Y'all tripping. But
well, like I said, I'm Tila Rock.
Yeah.
I'm Tila Rock.
Okay, you took it back.
I'm Tila Rock.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Tila Rock.
So
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I
don't attack people on behalf of my top MCs, but please, we gonna talk about what that entails. So there's many things that go into it. So brother mentioned Sean Combs. Sean Combs is similar to other musical producers and discoverers, and that's like a century or more of Black people who've been doing things behind the scenes. It's not new. So a lot of times when people hear about allegations being finally taken seriously, they think of R. Kelly. R. Kelly was known very much of picking up girls, right? Bringing his car to high schools, maybe even middle schools, right? So the rest of us, when we saw it on the news, we were like, oh my goodness, Aaliyah was, a youngin', right? And I want our people to remember, we do have cultures around the world in which there's no age limit for alcohol, for military service, for sex, for marriage. But in cultures where there are considered normative behavior and laws, there are considerations for when things are appropriate. That does vary by culture. But we are, as Black people, we are in a nation where we have laws, and it applies to boys as well, where you're not going to be 14, 15, 16, 17 and having consensual sex with a legal adult. Just like when you hear people critique MC Light's lyric about wanting 17-year-olds, and she was 19 when she wrote that lyric. So
Wait.
And again, I'm MC Light's on my top list, so I'm a big MC Light.
She's on my top list as well. I wasn't aware. I guess I wasn't aware of that particular lyric.
Yeah, it was.
What's kind of interesting to me is I'm DJing an event this coming Monday, and the young lady asked for some R. Kelly, and I was like,
"No,
is it too early?" She's like, "Look, I don't care what nobody thinks. I love this music. Okay. I gotta play it."
And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that, how as Black people, particularly in America, but if you can look at from a global, when I say Black people, I'm talking about those of us of immediate African descent. We're not talking about Asian populations who choose to identify as Black because they're darker melanin, bigger nose. We're talking about people of immediate African descent. It's impossible for us to abandon everyone and everything because of some things that are done. That includes family, music, genres, because we want to talk about this from like the 1900s music that our people have done. It's impossible to abandon everything when you learn about your favorite. Like if you learn about David Ruffin, you learn about some other things going on with our favorite musical legends. So this is where we have to, as a culture, we're talking about the progress of our people regarding economic progress and other progress we need to do to unify. Whenever we talk about misogyny, Black people, not only men, but Black people in general, in religious realm and overall, they want to silence it because they feel like you are now closing the door for everyone and everything. And that's not what this means. It means you have to have factual discussions to understand how to evolve. As Harold Cruz says, Black evolution he called it Negro evolution. That's beyond a revolution. A revolution is something that you can talk about forever, right? Let's get together. Okay. Let's march. Let's do this. That's revolutionary. Let's talk about this. But when we talk about this, developing our own concepts, theories, research, and putting it into actions for changes mean we're not spending all day talking about we're oppressed. We're going to blame everybody else. It's like, what are we doing? That's a Black nationalist standpoint. That's the evolution standpoint. But an evolution is impossible if we're not talking about the harms done in our families, if we're not talking about the harms done in our communities, if we're not talking about the harms done in our schools, including HBCUs, if we're not talking about the harms done in our collective, our organizations, our religious groups, our groups that raise money and they do not tell Black people where the money is spent. And this is one thing I want our people to understand. So, yay, shout out to Marcus Garvey, UNIA. So this past Sunday, the celebration of 111 years of UNIA, which of course was co-founded by Amy Ashford Garvey and Marcus Garvey. And one of the many things to understand from Marcus Garvey that he was honest about when Amy Jackie Garvey wrote the book was that he kept a lot of financial records. In fact, some of his financial record keepers and accountants were white Jews at that time. But it wasn't the record keeping and the quality assurance that was needed when he was getting those ships, right? Going to West Africa, particularly Liberia. So that was one of the critiques that he could have of himself. What does it mean when we actually have quality assurance? We don't just tell Black people, give money. We promise you we're keeping records. Instead, it's give money, we're keeping records, but now we will let you know what data we have to prove that the money's spent the way it is. So that's one thing that I want to start off with to let our people know that these discussions of misogyny, it's not like bashing men in the head unless they deserve it, of course. So yeah, brother.
If I could jump in, a couple years ago, Dream Hampton was interviewed in the Washington Post. This is during the 50th anniversary of hip hop, and she was the co-producer of the Ladies First documentary series, and she directed, I think, the 3rd episode. And in it, she said that the big three in hip hop, Dr. Dre, Afrika Bambaataa, and Russell Simmons have been accused of being very harmful to Black women, and that's something that we have to discuss. Which we kind of ignored during the 50th anniversary. Like we kind of glossed over that. But that's something that we need to discuss. And it's something that you were saying, good doctor, that when it talks about revolution, is hip hop revolutionary if we are being misogynistic and homophobic at the same time? Like, can you be revolutionary and be that, right?
Yep.
So I think that's a good question that she asked. And it kind of like ties into that. Because when you sent me this email, Sekou, that's the first article I talked about. And she just did a documentary last year about Biggie, because she had some video footage about Biggie. So she did a thing last year, a documentary about him.
What did she say in the documentary?
I haven't seen it because I looked up that article. That's when I found out, and I was like, "Oh snap!" I saw Ladies First, but I didn't see the one she did last year on Biggie. So I just discovered that. Yeah.
Now I have to admit, well, first of all, Danny and I go back a millennia.
Pretty much.
And we were both really heavily involved. I actually got involved around the same time with the Universal Zulu Nation Solar Flare chapter here in the Hampton Roads area. You were president at one time. I became president at a different time. Yeah. And one of the things that I love about you, bro, is you introduced me to some critical thinking when it came to our culture. And you're one of the first persons I ever used the word misogyny, and you're the very first person I ever heard use the term misogynoir. How did you start dealing with misogyny? Because you become an advocate. I don't want to use the term advocate. You become a soldier in the war for our sisters, and I truly appreciate that. So you've been more than an advocate. You're a soldier. How did you become involved with understanding misogyny in our culture, and then how did you become involved in battling it?
You were there when it happened. You were there. We did a b-boy battle, and shout out to Spunk, right? Spunk had a flyer. He made a flyer. It was a 2-sided flyer. On one side, it was b-boys battling, and on the other side was a young lady with a big booty on a motorcycle. She was standing up on the motorcycle, and you could see her butt cheeks. So it was a double flyer, right? Now,
yeah, I do remember that.
The flyer. I'm not gonna hold you. I approved the flyer because Spunk's point was, when we do these b-boy battles, only the b-boys come out and nobody else. You know what I'm saying? And he's like, if you want to make some money, we got to kind of like really like spread it out. And I said, okay, I approved the flyer, which I shouldn't have, right? And we had our biggest crowd ever. We had our biggest crowd ever to that B-boy battle, right? Now,
Right.
the B-boy battle was over. We was like, man, we really packed the house, right? And Azita Ranjabar came to me, and Azita approached me about it. And she was like, who approved this flyer? And I said, well, I approved the flyer. And she cut into me. Now, I'm not gonna hold you. That day we laughed at her. Like we kind of like laughed her. Like she was mad. She went into a car and drove off. You know what I mean? And then the following Friday when we had our meeting, she came early and she checked me. She was like, hey, da 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 da. And I was like, she gave me a talking to. And that was the moment I was like, damn, I really gotta, if I'm about this life, I really gotta get on it. And that was the moment where that changed for me. Now, don't get me wrong, I wasn't somebody that was like, if you remember, I didn't listen to all the stuff that you was listening to. I'm like, nah, I don't listen to that. That's trifling. You know, I don't believe in killing our people. I was on that because I was a super hotep, you know what I mean? But I didn't, you know what I'm saying? I never said misogyny, you know what I'm saying? So it was kind of like, I wasn't on that. But Azita checked me on that, and it really put me on that path. So shout out to Azita.
Well, then I gotta give my shouts to Azita as well, because I remember when she was doing an event and she hired me to DJ. And there's a lot of background sound in your audio, Doc. And so she hired me to DJ the event. And she said, I don't want anything that's derogatory towards women or derogatory towards men. And I thought that was interesting because she didn't want anybody to get, she didn't want us to be destructive towards anybody, right?
Yeah.
And then I put on the beat for the song that Nas, Uchi Wally.
Okay.
Uchi Wally Wally. Uchi. And I was just using the beat. And I used the beat as a bed as I was talking to the crowd. And she came over there and fussed me out. And I was like, I'm not playing the song. She said, you're playing the song. You're playing the instrumental. We know what the words are. Those words are not good for our people. And I was just like, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. It messed me up.
She was younger than all of us.
So what's your definition of misogyny?
Who you talking to the doctor?
To you, and then we'll go back to the good doc. She'll take over.
Misogyny is just hatred and violence towards women. And misogynoir would be hatred and violence towards black women. So yeah.
Okay.
And when I say violence, I don't mean like punching somebody in the face. I'm like doing things to make them feel uncomfortable, being hostile towards them, harassing them, things that feel violent, things that actually really hurt and cause trauma. Like, so yeah.
Good doctor. Does your definition of misogyny collate with Danny, or does yours goes further, or what do we need to know about misogyny as we move forward in this discussion?
Yes, the more overt definition would be the violence, but we can look at it in terms of the larger power. And one thing that's important to highlight when we're talking about power is not always violent. It's not always screaming and controlling people in a way that seems exploitative. And that's important to highlight because a lot of people feel like as long as it's a peaceful environment, it doesn't matter which group is always in charge. If we look at that in terms of race, people can grasp what I'm saying, right? But it's when we're talking about gender, and particularly Black and gender combined, which again, Anna Julia Cooper wrote about that in A Voice from the South before W.B. Du Bois's Souls of Black Folk. When we're talking about gender, what does it mean to be controlled, even when it's a loving control? What does it mean when nearly every Black music genre is controlled by men, specifically Black men, and the Black men will claim they're controlled by white Jewish men and white men who are not Jewish? And that's oftentimes a disguise to attempt to negate the fact that Black men are dominant in nearly all music genres. You can see this in nearly every famous Black singer, Black artist across the span. Hip hop's an example, but it's in rock and roll. Despite we have all these Rosetta Thorpe and all these wonderful Black women who've been leaders in genres, Black men are the ones you hear about and you celebrate. And so you see that in music, you see that in religious collectives, you see that in community collectives. And of course, people can say in terms of men have had a household, and then people who believe in a such thing as Adam and Eve and all types of other things. These are all different ways that you can look at that as an example of misogyny, because you can say, well, everyone's loving, polite, they're doing it in the name of Allah, in the name of Jesus, in the name of God. But understand, when there's control in any form, and there's consistent control across all these different environments, with rare exceptions, in other words, Black women who have a power dynamic and are the contributors to it, we're oftentimes considered arrogant, aggressive, non-nurturing, non-motherly. We're considered invading the space that's supposed to be controlled by men. So if you have spaces where men, and Black men specifically, are the ones in charge, such that when Black women are included, it's because the Black men have said, we're going to share the space with you. I always tell Black people that when Black women are included because it's based on permission, it's not kicking in the door, waving the 4-4, as Biggie said, you're given permission to come into these spaces to contribute, that's because Black women don't have any control. Therefore, I don't compliment Black men for opening spaces for Black women, because they're not reducing the Black men control. They're signing a permission slip to let other people in. The same thing as when non-Blacks sign permission slips to let Black people into spaces. Black people should not say, thank you, massa, thank you, right? Instead, you're saying we need more spaces where we don't need permission from other people. And that's the same thing that Black women have. So when you're looking at Black women in hip hop, Black women in hip hop have had that difficulty when, if you want to talk about your body, you want to talk about sex, you want to make it clear you're not doing it to increase your record sales. You're doing it because these Black men are talking about a range of stuff. They talking about all types of things. Like, you know, my top MCs, my top hip hop duos, they got all types of, if you listen to their lyrics, they talking about a whole type of stuff, right? They'll talk about women on one line, the next bar is talking about drinking, the next bar is talking about shooting somebody, and people are just jamming to it. For women's songs in hip hop, a lot of times people want one topic in the song. Stick to the topic, woman, right?
Ooh.
Stick to the topic. Don't be, you know, women, y'all are so emotional. Y'all lyricism is just, it's undervalued because, you know, y'all ain't lyricists. Y'all are just emotional wrecks. And so that's why people are shocked when they hear like Lauryn Hill and other women MCs, because they're like, yo, she be kicking it. I'm like, come on, y'all. Black artistry, African artistry, that's not just men doing that. You know, we got it. It's just, we have so many artists who you'll never hear about. Like I always tell people, like your top MCs, it doesn't mean they're the best MCs to exist. It means that they're like the top MCs. But if you look at underground MCs, like, you know, there's underground MCs who are famous, but they're still really underground because they were never like top selling, top ranking MCs. And they actually get more concerts overseas. And so Black women haven't gone there.
You bring up something really interesting. So I know how a lot of times we hear people complain that the white power structure is like shut up and dribble or shut up and rhyme. But with women, it's like stick to the topic. Whoa. So the misogyny in hip hop is not just the lyrics that men might say. It's the consumer behavior and the expectation of the artist. I hadn't considered that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, it's
whoa.
yeah. Brother Dan, were you gonna say something?
No, I was gonna say, I was gonna reference what happened to. Damn, I can't believe I forgot her name when she said she was into anime and how people flipped the lid. And then when she said she was going to MomoCon in Houston this year, was it MomoCon? And people was like, "Oh, you're not a real anime fan." And I'm like, if she likes anime and she's going to MomoCon, she's an anime fan. Like, what are you talking about? But she only talks about sex, and that's all she should talk about. And I'm like, but she could still be an anime fan. You know what I'm saying? She grew up in that era where everybody was watching Cartoon Network and Toonami, but because she's a woman, she can't talk about anime. It's a perfect example.
And
Is that Jean Grey?
No,
Yeah.
I hate when this happens to me. I'm old. She got shot in the foot by that one dude.
Megan Thee Stallion.
Megan Thee Stallion.
Yeah.
Megan Thee Stallion. When a couple years ago, she was like, "I'm into anime," and the internet went crazy. No, you can't be into anime.
Well, first of
And
all,
it was just like,
they're not familiar with like 1980s, 1990s. Back in the day when we had like Cinemax and HBO late night, they would play adult cartoons that would include.
she's the Toonami generation
Yeah.
because she's in her late 20s.
Yeah, so she's young, but
my son is 30, so
Yeah.
my son got introduced to anime through Toonami. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
but
So like, yes.
I always
So
want
she's that generation.
I
Yeah.
always want
Yeah.
black people to learn what came before you though. So
True indeed.
anime has always, like, cartoons and animes have always been sexualized. Like, a lot of cartoon is
Yeah.
created for adults anyway. Like, even Looney Tunes was really created for adults. Like, the messages, the blackface, that was created for adults to understand. Children wouldn't know what they were looking at, right? So if you look at like old Cinemax cartoons, I always forget the name of the character, but it would show sexual behavior and all types of things. And you could think back to like our video games from the 80s and 90s as well. And so that's an
Well,
example. Mhm.
was the misogyny in those early? We used to call it Japanation. We used to call it
Japanation.
Japanation.
Japanation,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But was the misogyny there as well? I'm wondering if it's just baked in the cake.
It was in Tom and Jerry had
Mhm.
misogyny too. Tom and Jerry, Bugs Bunny,
Mhm.
Tom and Jerry had a mammy character.
Yep. There's actually a documentary
Yep.
about this that I used to always show to students. It's about the video games and the images of race and women and who creates these video games. And it shows video games, white men mostly, and Asian men mostly creating these video games. So the images are not a typical woman's body in the first place. It's very sexual. And so yeah, so like one of my favorite games, Mortal Kombat, all these games. I love Mortal Kombat. And the movies were horrible, but the video game is still fun. But you notice that there's only one or two women characters in it. So these are examples, and when you add hip hop to that, you can think about it in terms of course, Wu-Tang Clan, how they connect with that Asian culture, and of course, De La Soul's connection. They released their new video. Their new video is a cartoon video. The song they did with MF Doom is a cartoon, and so these are just examples of the way that Black culture is expressed. So you can see that hip hop has been put into cartoons for a long time. Like we used to have cartoons that would use hip hop in the 80s as well, 90s. But I do want to highlight something. African Bambaataa. Okay. So do you both know what African Bambaataa was found accused of doing?
Yes, that's why we left the Zulu Nation. That's why we left Zulu Nation.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
I think we should go deeper.
Yes.
We left Zulu Nation because Zulu Nation attempted to cover up what he did. Yeah. Right.
And that's the abusing boys.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? What is it? Ain't we're out acting like it's a secret.
No, for us, it's not a secret. I know there, and it's funny because me and Adisa Banjoko discussed this, and he was saying how when that all came out, the question he asked was Zulu Nation relevant? Because a lot of people were like, Zulu Nation who? African Bambaataa who? Us old heads, we knew, like we were like, oh snap, and it affected us tremendously, right? But for like the younger generations, they were like, who's African Bambaataa? Who's Zulu Nation?
They know.
Yeah. So
party people, yeah. I mean,
when I played and I say that's Bambaataa, they'd be like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
But
they've
they're not
heard
like,
the song.
oh,
They've
right.
heard it. Yeah. A good
Yep.
DJ will mix it in there some if they're doing like a hip hop round. So yeah, it's just when understanding the accusations, that's the thing about hip hop. You know, a lot of our hip hop legends know a lot of stuff that's happening. They know a lot of stuff that's happening. Some of them are doing the stuff that's happening, right? And so you oftentimes don't hear about it until it's just brought to the forefront. And so this is just another reason why we just have to think critically about what we're going to do, because like when we talk about homophobia, a lot of my favorite artists have homophobia in the lyrics. Like my favorite EPMD song, Rampage, Parrish, had to start off with the F word.
Yeah. Yep.
So whenever I use Rampage a lot, my favorite lyric in the song is LL's lyric. To rip up the mess, the overlordian playing them seems like old accordion. I guess the inspiration for in the same station.
That title.
Yeah, that's my favorite. You can't smoke with the weak and don't try to sneak it. Anyway, okay. Yeah, that's my favorite lyric in the song. However, I always have to skip Parrish's lyric because it started off so well and then boom. And you hear that a lot. Like whenever I listen to, of course I listen to hip hop all day, every day. You know, my favorite duo, Smith and Wesson. That album, whoo, and they used, of course, patois. So a lot of times when DJs do not know languages, I tell this to DJs, black DJs all the time. If you're going to play some reggae or some New York hip hop, know the languages because you're playing some stuff. And you need to they need to understand why Smith and Wesson created a version to play on the radio. And there's a version that there's on live stream now that doesn't include the patois. Instead, they'll talk about the DJ term that they've replaced with the original term that they were using. And this is something that's a big deal because thankfully Smith & Wesson's new album, I have not heard any of those lyrics. Yeah. And I love the new album. Okay. So yeah.
And I just want to point out that and I was trying to allude to it earlier, that you see a lot of these moguls, you see a lot of these leaders in these cultures, they go to court because their power has already waned, right? Russell Simmons wasn't the kingmaker that he was, so when that documentary came out, he didn't have as much power and influence as he did 20 years ago. Same thing with Bambaataa. That's what I was trying to say with Zulu Nations. We didn't have the same influence that we had 20 years ago, right? Diddy doesn't have the same influence and power that he had 20 years ago. Cosby didn't have the same power that he had in the 80s and 90s. So when they lose that power and influence, that's when people are less afraid to come out, and more people are less afraid to say, yeah, I did witness this, or I took part in this. So that's what we're seeing. But when we're in the height of our power, same thing with R. Kelly, when we're in the height of our power, a lot of men and women, a lot of people abuse that power, and then when it wanes, that's when people come out and say, hey, even though there was witnesses left and right from the beginning, so yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So when we talk about misogyny, we talk about the disrespectful, the violent, the demeaning ways that women are treated. What's interesting to me is the case of Young M.A. And I know I'm going to get some flack. I'm going to get some pushback. But I see Young M.A., not just her, but some of the other artists, some of the lyrics are as demeaning, and it bothered me. It really bothered me when I was listening to one of her songs, like particularly, when she had Ooh, that was a banger. But when she's like, I don't really care about her, I just want, what she can do for me. And I was like, wow, that's the same thing.
I'd go so far as to say that she has more male fans than women fans. Because every time I bring her up, dudes are like, yo, she be like, it's like, as soon as I bring her name up, I've yet to hear a dude be like, she all right. They always be like, oh my God, she's dope. And she's like, she's, like, she kind of like writes in the same fashion. Like, she sounds like a daughter of Biggie. You know what I mean? Like, she writes in the same fashion, right? She writes in that same fashion. So like, but I would say, I've never done the math, I've never done the data. I would say she has more male fans than women fans.
Well, are her lyrics misogynistic.
Yes. It's like the doctor said. Doesn't matter who's doing it. It's still hatred towards women.
Well, so there is a difference in this though. Number one, I'm not familiar with Young M.A.
Okay.
But I will say it contributes.
You don't want to be.
Yeah. I tell people I'm old hip hop, but there are some new artists who, and including some new underground artists, local artists as well, who, for me, it has to sound old, even if they don't know it sounds old. So, yeah.
Can I jump in? And Seiko, you can correct me on that. I'm very biased as well. If it's boom bap, I'm fucking with it. You know what I'm saying? There's some people, there's other people like Outkast, T.I. that I'll mess with that are not boom bap. But if it's not boom bap, 95% of the time, I'm not going to mess with it. Would you say that Young M.A. is boom bap? Because I think she is.
Yes.
So trust me, she's boom bap. So you're like, oh. Like she could, like if she came out in the 90s, she would have been in boot camp.
Oh.
She would have been in the boot camp.
You said BCC, like boot camp click, like Smith and Wesson,
yeah.
Helter Skelter,
Yeah.
Original Gun Coppers,
Black Moon. She would have came out with them, right?
She would have been them, or she would have been on Bad Boy.
You know, Boot Camp Click. That's my favorite, and Black Moon's my favorite group. Yeah. Okay, so
you would have been right up in there. She would have been in Nervous Records.
Okay,
she would have been in Nervous Records. Yep.
Okay, you're saying a whole lot. Just that's a lot of clout as far as I'm concerned when you say that.
And again, correct me if I'm wrong. You know what I'm saying? But she's boom bap, and that's why my students joke me about it. They go, I know you would like her because she's boom bap. And I was
that's the way she rhymes. That's her style.
Okay.
She doesn't sound like Glorilla. She don't sound like Saweetie. I love Saweetie. She don't sound like my city girls. She rhymes in a New York B-boy.
Yep.
B-girl, because we've had B-girls for generations. It doesn't have to be B-boy.
All right.
Misogynist.
Good correction.
Misogynist.
Yeah. I'm still toxic. I imagine I'm still working on it. I'm still toxic. I'm not with Danny is.
But you know what, Seiko? I'm like you. I'm a recovering misogynist. Yes, that's what we are. We're recovering misogynists.
It's a continuous learning process. So I would say she's not a So here's the contributions.
You gotta listen to it.
Women do contribute. Look here.
You gotta listen to it.
That's like saying when you listen to Lucille Bogan, 1920s, 1930s juke joint music, right? And I'm a big fan.
I got a story about her.
Yeah, I mean, so our people have done raunchy music for more than a century on the Western Hemisphere, right? So the contributions of women to that, because men were doing a whole lot of that. So the contributions of women to that, a lot of times people will see it as empowering, and you can see it from a Black gender justice focus. It would be Black women saying, I'm taking charge of this, like Salt and Pepper, who I love Salt and Pepper, right? I'm taking charge of this. I can talk about my body. I can talk about women's body because I have a woman's body, that kind of thing. So whether it's misogynist would be based on the context, though. It could have misogynist interpretation depending on the audience. But I do firmly believe in the member of that group being able to take hold of that definition and that expression, just like when Black people who choose to call each other nigga do so. I never ever say, stop saying that, because what if? Look here, there's other groups of people who call themselves certain terms that they don't want anyone else to use. Black people are not the first, we're not the only, we're not the last. So I think that that's important to consider also when talking about misogyny. You can perpetuate that by putting it in music, of course, because now you're saying that men can listen to it and men can sing along and men can buy into the image. So that's just one of the difficulties when understanding the Black culture, which Harold Cruz is explaining the role of Black culture, because he did, of course, theater. You can put it in the form of art. Just know that many people are not going to interpret it and use it the way that you intended. And that's one of the difficulties there.
All right, on the screen I have the
sociologist, fellow sociologist, Dr. Patricia Collins, who also has some wonderful books about Black intellectualism, which I have here, which I encourage our people to read. She wrote about more than the intersectionality and feminism.
And she wrote about hip hop too. She wrote about hip hop.
Yeah.
All right. So what did she say about hip hop that we should bring into today's discussion?
If I remember correctly, and just like she, Dream Hampton echoed what she's saying, is that we can't call something revolutionary if it's denigrating the women, right? We can't say that, and we really have to. Hip hop is a powerful tool. Is a powerful tool of communication, but we really have to check ourselves. We really, really do when it comes to that. Not just when it comes to the creative, but also like the good doctor was saying, also who's in charge, right? Like who's controlling it, like who's in the boardroom, who is making the decisions. And she has mentioned that there have been Black women in Def Jam, Sylvia Robinson on Sugar Hill Records, right? You have, women all over the place. Dream Hampton, the aforementioned Dream Hampton, who is probably one of the best curators of hip hop culture that we have today, and they all are, but we don't know who these women are.
Well, co-keepers, you've stuck around. You've heard what the great doctor and good brother Dan Trezomi has said about misogyny and the fact that it exists in hip-hop, and we should be more cognizant and revolutionary in our approach. So let's end this with how we become revolutionary in our approach. How do we address this in a way that we can say that in 10 years, if we follow some of the things you're going to talk about, that misogyny in hip-hop would extremely be reduced?
That's not going to happen.
What do we do?
No, that's not going to happen. I actually don't believe in censorship like that. I'm a fan of Two Live Crew, for goodness sake. And I don't believe in banned in the USA. I don't believe in censoring people. I
love some of Two Live too.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Two Live Crew. I'm a fan of Luke Skywalker and all that stuff.
It's not boom bap.
Yeah,
it's not boom bap, but I like that shake.
But he never pretended to be. He never pretended to be either. He never would go to the cipher. You would never find him trying to be in battle rap.
That's not boom bap.
Yeah. So he's fine. So. He doesn't care about that.
But you're saying that there's never going to be a time. There's no way that we can make a cultural change. And we're not talking simply about censorship, but okay. No, so let's take censorship off the table.
Yeah, I agree with her on that. I think, oh man, I hate to, because it was Bam who taught me this, right? It needs to be balanced.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Right? We need even, and not just like when it comes to hip hop music, like when we play Black music, period, right? I should go to an event and I should hear, Lenny Kravitz, and I should hear Salt from the UK. I should hear, Megan Thee Stallion. I should hear, you know what I'm saying? I should hear all of that in one spot, one place that I go. Right? I should hear reggae, right? I should hear ska. I should hear all that.
Yeah.
And hip hop should be the same way. It shouldn't just be one style of hip hop music being played by just these four artists all the time. It should be, we're listening to everything. And talking about it. And talking about it.
So understand, like, since you mentioned reggae, what happened to reggae artists? So if you look back to the 80s and 90s reggae, that was very, very, very homophobic. Like when you listen to old Buju Banton, Cuddy Ranks, and other Shabba Ranks, all of them. So then they formed, not them, but other people formed a reggae coalition to address homophobia in the lyrics. And also if they tried to travel to Europe, no European nation would allow them to come there if they was going to be spitting those lyrics on stage. So that's another example of some changes that were being made. That's why you will see the difference in Buju Banton's lyrics when he was like 19, 20, 21, much older now. Other reggae artists have never apologized. They might have conveniently changed their lyrics, but they've never formally apologize for doing so. But I tell people, even if you're changing your lyrics or not doing this one track, or you're changing the lyrics in that track because you want to get paid for a concert, that's just, at least, you're changing something. I always tell people, one thing about justice is that justice is going to oftentimes come in a monetary way. Justice is not based on morality. Black people need to stop pretending that Black justice is going to be a result of changing people's minds. Like I don't believe in bias trainings, right? I don't believe in implicit bias. I always tell people, as a social scientist, I truly don't care what people are thinking like that. I mean, I do social psychology work, but I don't sit around thinking, what you thinking? What you thinking? I don't be like, you gonna change your mind about black folks? You gonna change your mind about black women? I tell people, you can hate us, you can hate me. Have so much fun with that. What I care about is your actions, right? So when you think about it from like hip hop, reggae, and all different genres with offensive lyrics, when they make changes, it's because not the boycotts. People love saying that they're going to boycott concerts and picking up, purchasing stuff. No, the real money changes come from the record labels and the places abroad that say you can't tour here. That's a lot of times where the real changes happen. Because here's the thing. If you really think that black folks are going to boycott these artists for misogyny, and they're not boycotting people like R. Kelly. If R. Kelly went on concert now, and if he was allowed to be a guest for artists like Usher and Beyonce, you know how many black folks would buy tickets? They wouldn't care.
And he will make all the podcast rounds. He will make all the radio
He would
station
do all
rounds.
that.
He would
Yeah.
be on,
Well,
he would be on
that's-
all the
it's-
shows.
He
He would
would-
be everywhere.
and
Yep.
it- and
Essence
it-
Fest. Yep.
And it wasn't even, and he's abusing black women, but also he's raping black girls. People who say that he had sex with black girls, no, he did not have sex with Aaliyah and other black girls. That's rape. You're a
Rape.
child.
Yep.
He was a
Yep.
grown man.
Yep.
That's rape.
Yep.
It's not
That's rape.
consensual.
Yep. That is not
You know
There's
what?
no
And
contract.
what's interesting, what's really interesting to me is the client that I have coming up Monday, the party that I'm doing, who specifically asked for 3 R. Kelly songs.
Okay.
They're white.
Oh, wow. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
and so it's really interesting because I guess we've allowed the denigration of ourselves, and we've popularized it so much that those who enjoy our cultural expression are now slowly accepting some of the demeaning things that we've accepted.
well, the majority of our music is actually not purchased by black people. It's actually purchased
true.
by white
Yep.
people. And that's
people. Yep.
something, the majority
Yep.
of concert tickets are purchased by whites. And the
Yep.
majority of, back when we had cassettes and DVDs and CDs, whatever. But so it's mostly white people in the first place. So the industry knows that, because if it was all black people, like it was in the 1950s when they divided the genres by soul and so forth, then they would not care so much. It would not be so widespread. It wouldn't make so much money. It wouldn't get so many concert sales. It wouldn't have entire NPR episodes using it as theme music. So it is mostly white people, and not only white people, but the majority is white people when you talk about non-black people. So when you're talking about making changes to that, I always tell our people, so our 2 weeks ago, we talked about Black power and hip hop using Goat Rakim as an example. So in the comments section, I put the readings up there. People can click those links and access it. So those readings included Harold Cruz's focus on Black artists as the intellectuals and scholars to advance our people, and also have up there information about Thomas Sowell's perspective about rap and William Julius Wilson's perspective about rap. Now you'll notice their perspective about rap, their critique has nothing to do with gender. Most of these scholars were not caring about the gender, and they're both alive, by the way. They weren't talking about gender. Instead, they're talking about depicting our people as violent and poor. And how does that represent Black people? Now, Harold Cruz was still alive when hip hop, because he did not pass away until the 2000s. But there's no record of Harold Cruz ever speaking about hip hop and rap, which is interesting.
Well, I want to go back to our conversation about what we should be doing. Now, we all agree that the boycott is not necessarily the most productive way to go. But what's interesting is you did point out 2 examples where, one, a group of people came together and said, we're going to stop this from happening. And the artist had to curtail to it, right? So maybe it's not the boycott, we're not buying your record, we're not streaming your record, but it looks to me like a organization or organized effort could have an effect. Am I wrong?
I already responded to that. That's why I was explaining Harold Cruz. That's why I was explaining Harold Cruz just now. I was explaining Harold Cruz just now because so we're not going back to that. That's actually what I was just explaining. Harold Cruz never touched on hip hop and rap, but since he used Black artists as the intellectuals and scholars, we could focus on which artists are the intellectuals and scholars. People can choose what music they listen to or not, but Black people will be wasting time thinking that they're going to completely change the genres. That's just not how it's going to work. Also, Black people who want to support more local artists, a lot of local artists are not doing the misogynistic songs. Now, there are a lot of local artists across the nation who put falsehoods in their lyrics, though. So you have to understand the trade. It's a trade. If you want to get rid of misogyny, you're going to hear some religious beliefs in songs that are not based on facts. You can hear all types of other stuff. So people just have to figure out what they want to hear, just like I critique X-Clan and all these other groups. You know, they had some positive stuff, but when you dissect their lyrics and their images and their videos, it wasn't true representation of Nubian Africans. A lot of it was Arab Muslim colonizer depictions of Africans. So that's the evolution. The evolution is having a reality as Black people. Stop pretending that you're going to just stop things from happening all of a sudden. Stop pretending that you're going to boycott BET. I mean, first of all, number one, where are you putting your money if you don't expect most of the most popular Black stations to be non-Black owned in the first place? So
and as someone like myself, like I'm creating ciphers here in my community. Got a breakdancing club, opening another breakdancing club, and we're trying to create like a district-wide battle competition for students in our district. You know, I use these conversations for my students, and the question we always ask is, hey, we don't see a lot of women in these spaces. What's going on? Like, what is going on? And how do we figure that out? And we're having some really dynamic conversations about that. But I agree with you. We do have to support local artists because hip hop we need to take it back to hip hop being local and community based.
Yeah.
Not as Dream Hampton said, an arm of capitalism, you know.
Well,
so,
it is.
If hip hop is more community, if hip hop is more community based, do you think there would be a reduction?
No, it's always
yes. I think if it's less an arm of capitalism and more community based, we will have everybody in the cipher. Everybody will have opportunity to be in the cipher. Whether we're talking about b-boying, we're talking about b-girling, we're talking about graph writing, we're talking about DJing, all of that. And not just in the cipher, but also organizing those ciphers. Because it's much more than just me having a girl breakdancing in my club, right? It has to be women who put those ciphers together, women that are putting together these schools of hip hop culture, like that, all of that. Like that's what that all means, you know. Not just the getting access to the spaces, but also organizing those spaces and putting them together.
So I want to highlight, though, that critiquing hip-hop and changing it does not require anti-capitalism jargon. So it's still capitalism. Everyone who wants profit, that's capitalism. Whether people...
No, anybody who wants to exploit labor is capitalism.
No, that's not...
Because we all have to eat.
No,
we all have to eat, and money is a tool.
That's not the definition of... That's not the definition of capitalism.
But exploiting labor, well, that's... From my perspective,
I know that's the Marxist.
So as long as labor's not exploited,
that's Frederick Engels and Karl Marx. I want Black people I want Black people to get beyond that European standpoint and understand that for more than a century, U.S. capitalism has integrated forms of socialism. And if you read Huey P. Newton's writing about Black capitalism, the approach that can be used to be productive for our people and our community, there is a reality to that. That's also, of course, the foundation of Booker T. Washington, components of Du Bois, Harold Cruz, Marcus Garvey, Magdalena Walker. So I do want that to be a very important thing to highlight. So some of the top MCs, 4 of them are forming potentially a coalition. Rakim, KRS-One, Cool G Rap, and why did all of a sudden I forget the 4th person? I can't believe that just happened. Just as soon as I said
it was Chuck D.
Chuck D.
It was Chuck.
No.
It was Chuck D.
Is it Chuck D?
I think so.
Um,
I might be wrong.
So, Coogee Rap has been accused of violence towards women. And, all the MCs on that list are based on men dominance. So we can encourage these men to form peaceful coalitions that present solutions for our people in a way that doesn't have to be based on men dominance, but we already know that that's a difficult thing for most of our men to understand, because the idea, a lot of them just, you don't conceptualize men dominance because it's like, it's so normal, right? You're normal, you're here, right? And so we just want our people to just have realistic approaches. And when you're looking at a community focus for hip hop, it is reaching the community. And for people who want to make money, you do want to connect them with like Black community organizations that help people make albums, help people sell albums and all types of things, because there are different groups like that in the cities. But again, the misogyny part, that's looking at people's lyrics and also having a conversation with people and saying, we're not going to stop you from speaking how you speak, but then ask yourself, are you putting this in the song because it's part of your beliefs or because you think it's going to be record sales? And that's a huge difference as well, because sometimes the most offensive songs have the worst sales, right? Because, they thought it was going to really, do something, and the most misogynistic songs just didn't make it. And a lot of times people are not listening to your lyrics, but they have a good beat to it. So sometimes people think they're making a point with the lyrics that are misogynist, but people aren't actually waiting for that from that person. Like for Rakim, he has some men dominance in his stuff, but if he had a real misogynist song, I think a lot of people would be kind of like, are you tripping right now? Like, go find Eric B again. You wilding out, right? A lot of people would be like, okay, so yeah.
All right. Well, check it. It's about time to kind of bring this to a close. Today's show, we tried to present a lot of solutions, but it looks like we're kind of limited.
No, we're not, actually. We just gave you a long list. If y'all Black folks don't recognize solutions without me having to do a PowerPoint slide, I'm going to fight all of y'all. Look at Black folks.
No, I think we're limited.
What I said was enough.
Yes, we just you and I just outlined some solutions, and Black folks are Black folks are just difficult. You can tell Black folks, you can read 1,000.
I'm Black folks.
Yes.
She talking about me, y'all.
No.
You know what's crazy?
And I do think that we're limited. I think
you know what's crazy, Dr. Kimya? We literally, before you came on, we literally had a discussion about this, Sekou. Oh, back in the day, you said somebody came down from New York, and you was like, "Yeah, you missed the golden age of the 757," and we used to what? Put events together for people used to bring their entire families to our events.
Right.
And
no drama.
And I'm 804.
You know what I mean? And a lot of people used to be like, yo, I became this because I saw y'all do this.
Yeah.
I became a breaker because I saw y'all put this together.
Yes.
I became a DJ because y'all put this together.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I was 3 years old when I came to that joint, and now I'm 25 and I'm a DJ.
So
like, I fully think we can change. I fully think we can change culture in some additional ways. So I did feel like there was limited, but I didn't say that the solutions wouldn't work.
Look here.
I didn't say they wouldn't work. I didn't say they would be ineffective. I simply said I was really hoping that we could come up with more.
That's not how this
goes. I was saying.
So there's local DJs and also Black chambers of commerce and other Black groups that would connect with hip hop artists and youth who want to be connected with hip hop. There's many options that are actually happening already in cities, and it's teaching people how to do lyricism without having to add just random stuff because you think, yeah, this is going to offend so-and-so, and I want to offend people because it's going to be all over the internet if I offend someone. So again, people who want a quick answer, Black folks are always going to struggle if Black folks want a quick answer, okay? Black folks. No, I'm talking about in general. Black folks are also always going to struggle if you think that any answer is not going to sound like a good answer. That's just not the reality. And by the way, when I talked about the 4 MCs, it's Rakim, KRS-One, Big Daddy Kane, and Kool G Rap.
Okay.
So yeah,
right,
I was about to say Chuck D would not even fit in that.
So. No, okay. Where can people get more information that you have to share, Doc?
Yeah, so I added it to the comment section of ours 2 weeks ago, and I can add it again to this video. It's in the comment section. Black folks, we actually have solutions. We actually have solutions.
And I don't know if you use Seiko. I don't know if you use show notes. You should be able to upload those. You should be able to upload those links and everything into the show notes. So that way, if somebody missed it, they can just go to the show notes and click on it.
And Dan Torres, speaking about show notes, man, where can they find your show that they need to take note of?
Where My Killer Tape at on all platforms. Just did an episode with the homie Invincibility. We talked about breaking. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Breaking.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Hey, Code Keepers, classmates, you know what we just did?
Solutions.
You know we gotta change.
We did solutions.
And with that, I say hip hop peace.
Hip hop peace.
All right, y'all. In session.
It's still live.
Go ahead, Dan. Go ahead, man.